I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm willing to work as hard as I can.
There is no past, there's no future, there's just this moment right here.
If I did that, if I can get through that, like, come at me.
Changing how I saw myself, like as a man, not just as an athlete.
It's okay that I struggle. It's okay. That's part of the deal. It's how I respond to it.
This is the Limitless Athlete podcast. I'm Tom Foxley, founder of Mindset Rx'd and your host. And today on the show, I'm joined by a guest, Dan Williams, the founder of WIT. Now, Dan is a really awesome guest on this show. We actually talked about, I suppose it's kind of parallel to CrossFit and performance in CrossFit. He's obviously in the CrossFit space and is an athlete, albeit like not at the games this year. And he really, like, the conversation we go into is all about pursuing excellence and the hardships that you encounter on the path of excellence. But there's so many takeaways that you can translate to your pursuit of excellence in whatever goal that is, whether that is being the best spouse you can, the best parent you can, or being the best athlete that's possible. Love this chat with Dan, and here is the one and only Dan Williams. Welcome very much to the show, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
My absolute pleasure. So let's start where I always start with these interviews, because I think it's an interesting background piece. Tell me about like childhood, growing up. Like what are your kind of key memories of that?
Childhood growing up, most of my memories probably evolve around, and it's kind of stereotypical given I own a fitness business, but you know, most of my best memories probably evolve around sport and fitness. You know, I'm of that older age where there wasn't much being indoors, like everything was outdoors, and any sport I could play, I did play. I had four sisters. I've got four sisters, so that was challenging playing the sport at home rather than with my apart from with my old man. So I was always out at school or clubs playing, rugby, football, athletics, anything I could do, I would do. So definitely my happiest memories come from that. And I think that was probably the foundation of, probably in my mind from those early days, whenever anyone asked me, what do you want to do? I really had no clue. But, you know, I'm probably lucky enough to have realized subconsciously that it would always evolve around sports and fitness at some point. And I guess I've been lucky enough to attain that later in my life.
Yeah. What kind of level of athlete were you? Were you someone who was like, you found a sport and you're completely dedicated as a kid and like that's all you did? Or is it like you kind of smish mash of everything?
Yeah, I was a smish mash of everything. So I was probably like a good to average at everything. I was a good runner. I was a really good runner. But my downfall would have been that I didn't focus on it. So, you know, rather than I'd run during the summer, but rather than go to a club consistently over the winter, I just didn't do that. And when I got to 17, 18, I was a really good runner, but I still didn't do anything outside of the kind of 3 to 6 months of competition. And then when I got to uni, I realized, actually runners actually train 12 months a year. So when at first I was at uni and I didn't want to run because I just want to go out, right? And then when I realized how much I had to train, I kind of went up a level. So I am one to regret things. I think I was a talented runner, and I was probably talented enough to reach a very high level, but I just didn't consistently train for it because of too many distractions.
Yeah. That's it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it, having that kind of interest in everything, because you can identify principles from it, but also it's very difficult to pin it down on one thing. Did you have any go on, sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, I think it's one of those where I think someone needed to pin me down. So I think when I'm a parent, I might do this. I never want to be a pushy parent, and my parents weren't, but I think because I love so many sports, my dad probably at some point should have said, or would it be nice if he said, look, you're really good at running. You know, let's just take you to the running club for the next 12 months, but maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Who knows where you would have been if that wasn't the case. Did you have any like role models in terms of coaches? Like, who were you looking up to as a kid? Like, did you have like, I think the US listeners to this will be like, I don't know, that they seem to have like a much more dominant coaching in their life as children, rather than like in the UK, we don't really have that kind of relationship with sport. It's a slightly different. Well, I found that anyway. But like, did you have any coaches, mentors as a kid?
I didn't at school, but yeah, uni. If you're into athletics, you do develop a very strong bond with your coach. And I definitely had a couple of coaches who had a massive impact on my life. Because they instill a level of discipline that you don't have before. And it's also, and you see them 5-6 days a week, and you see, massive progression in your, your preferred sport. So definitely, I've had two athletics coaches which have had a massive impact on my life. I went to the funeral of one of them like years after he coached me. Was close to his wife. Yeah, I think with athletics and an individual sport, you can develop a very, very close relationship, and I'm sure you've come across runners who do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you put so much of your trust into them, right? Like you put so much of like your faith, your trust, your dedication, your effort. It's all channeled through their expertise and mentorship.
Yeah, and it's sometimes a bit of a strange relationship in a way. But I guess that's what it is with individual sports. So in a 15-a-side sport, 11-a-side sport, you've got your teammates and that camaraderie. As an individual, there might be 5 or 6 of you in a group, but really you're focusing on yourself, and it's only your coach you've really got that rapport with.
Yeah, absolutely. Who was that coach? Like, or you mentioned two. Like, who were they?
Yeah, so the first one was at University of Leeds coach Clem. He's still around at the University of Leeds. And then quite a famous athletics coach, actually, Wilf Paish. He used to coach me at Leeds Met Uni when I did a master's there. And he was a famous UK athletics coach, actually. But he was a very impressive individual, and just developed a close bond with both of them.
Yeah. So I find when we look up to role models like that, there's something that is latent within us, like this kind of vessel ready to be channeled, and they represent something. They're like, okay, that is the kind of the epitome of that thing that I know that I need to work on, and that I know that's ready within me. What was it that they represented that was so compelling to you?
I think what was compelling about the best coaches is, or they were back then, is that firstly, they push you to a performance level you didn't think you could achieve. That's what the best coaches will do. But secondly, they won't let you know that all the time. So praise is there, but limited. So it always keeps you on the edge of performance, and you're always striving for that next level. I found, when I've experienced different coaches in athletics, if you get comfortable with your performance, you're not moving forward. So the best coaches will be able to keep that empathy and rapport with the individual at the same time pushing them to a level that they didn't think that they could achieve, which is a difficult thing to do, right? If you're basically trying to be a friend and a boss and someone driving you forward at the same time, and I think the best coaches do both.
Yeah, and especially in like a male-to-male relationship, there's that kind of element of father figure that we're trying to chase down the perfect father figure of okay, show me something to represent again, like something to channel, something to be the best of. And it needs that. It's almost like too kind, you get complacent, you get it's too soft, too gentle. We need some hardship, but obviously so much coaching falls on the other side as well, of just never complimenting, especially in sports like weightlifting is a perfect example, because you're that was wrong, all legitimate criticisms of the lift, but there's all those pieces within there that it's just if you're just focusing on the negative, that obviously makes things a lot more challenging.
It does, and I think it's that again, the best coach is you're striving, it is a father figure, because you're trying to make them proud, not in the race. It's in the hardest sessions, or the progression throughout your career, or progression to that race. You're trying to hit those times that they believe you can hit, And when you make them proud, they give you that compliment. And when you don't, they give you the, feedback, what you need to work on and why, and you feel like you haven't achieved something.
Do you have any abiding memories of their coaching? Like if you think back to your training, if you think back to races, if you think back to kind of interactions with you, what are the memories that jump to mind?
Apart from the pain between reps, I think probably back to my last point, it's probably that you'd rarely get any praise, but when you got praise, you were so elated. You knew you were moving forward. If you got praise, you trusted them so much that you knew you were moving forward if you got some praise, and you kind of went into every session wanting to achieve that. And as I said, so there's a lot of highs and lows. There's a lot of highs and lows. Like you can't have the best session every day. You can't have the best day every day. But I guess it's the endorphins and the success and like achievement when the coach is giving you that positive feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the link here and the very obvious question that I think I must ask everyone who I ever speak to in this world is like, when and how did you find CrossFit or functional training? Like when did that come into your life?
Came into my life when I'd finished running, started my first business, was going to the gym like everyone. And I met one of the former owners of CrossFit West Yorkshire, and I went down for a session. Took my athletics group actually, and we did a session. I think the first session was like Helen or something, so it was like pull-ups, wall balls, kettlebells, and we were like, "This is easy." Like smashed everyone in the class. But then it was a bit of addictive, and I'd quit running by then. And it was just that element, like most people you probably speak to, element of camaraderie, element of fitness that I hadn't had since uni. And I was in love straight away. Perfect.
What was the cause of quitting running?
I just wasn't good enough. I didn't focus enough in my early years, so I hadn't achieved the level I needed to by my early 20s, and then I was striving to achieve a level that people were already at, which I knew I could have, but it was too late. So when I finished my master's degree, I was just like, I wasn't one of those people who was going to keep chipping away, trying, keep trying to make it, because I wanted to move on. I wanted to do something else. I wanted to like have success elsewhere, really.
Yeah. Were you bored of running then, like, or did it kind of like you lost your love of it, or was it kind of a decision with a heavy heart?
I wasn't bored. I just like when you're like at that reasonable to good level, you're either training to race competitively or for me or for nothing. Like and by the way, it goes against a lot that I would encourage it with a fitness customer, because you don't always have to train to compete or race to compete. But for me, it's always been the mindset. Super competitive, have to have a goal in mind, otherwise find it hard to motivate myself.
Yeah. No, I get you entirely. And then was it around the same time that you were setting up your first business? Yeah.
So while I was still running after uni, after master's degree, working in some bars to like pay the way and set up my first business there. Yeah. So mid-20s.
What was that doing?
Cleaning business.
Okay. And what drove you to that?
Very random, but there's a seamless link. So I worked in bars in Leeds, and it was something like the cleaning company of one of the bars, big bar by the way, really big bar, was awful. And I was like, I reckon I could do this. I reckon I could get a company and a team together to do this. And my mate was GM of the bar. He was like, all right, we'll give it a go. And this was like one of the biggest bars in Leeds. So I went in and did that. And, after a few years, we were cleaning most, it doesn't sound very glamorous, but most bars and nightclubs in Leeds, we were cleaning after 3 or 4 years. That was it. And it was a bit of a random one because it was never what I envisaged doing, but it would allow me to work for myself.
Was that not the childhood dream?
Not the childhood dream, yeah. It allowed me to work for myself. And
yeah.
I was still figuring out, again, this is quite relevant. I was still figuring out in my mid-20s, late 20s, what the hell I wanted to do. So it allowed me to kind of spend some time at least learning, my own mind and business.
Yeah, it takes a certain type of character to see that as an opportunity to go like, this is something that's actually a bit shit and not a very good job, and rather than just complaining about it or seeing it as someone else's problem, to go like, actually there's an opportunity within that?
I learned to properly graft. I learned to graft in bars actually initially, and then really graft with a cleaning company, because I was thinking, you know, if the cleaners would complain, then I was sticking my hand down unimaginable things in nightclubs to clean.
Yeah, we can take that out of context, Dan.
Yeah. I learned to graft. I learned to work long hours. I learned to work 7 days a week. The cleaning industry is no joke. You're talking 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with a lot of hard-working but low-paid people. So difficult teams to manage as well, but also very rewarding. So yeah, definitely learned to work hard there.
Yeah. What are your memories from that business when you think about it? Like, was there like one night that stands out? Were there difficult decisions you have to make?
Memories of people, because with the cleaning business you have a lot of people. And like I said, a lot of people been through some very hard childhoods or adult lives on the minimum wage, working bloody hard at crazy hours to get by. Opened up a whole new world to me, a whole new world. So it was super interesting with regards to that perspective, and you know, getting to know them, getting to know the challenges, but also a challenging way of leading a team. And going back to our first conversation, that how do you show empathy and rapport with these people who deserve it, but at the same time you're paying them to do a job which is, you know, earning you money. So that was my biggest takeaway. People. It was really hard business. Like, I didn't enjoy it that much for that long, but there was from a learning perspective, definitely that.
Yeah. How did you have to evolve? Because like, we often, like, my personal experience is like, started a CrossFit box, which like I was not qualified to run at all. In terms of, I had the coaching experience, I was like a great coach, but running a box, obviously completely different. That went under. I learned what I had to learn, but about 2 years after, I was like, that's what was important. Like, I was an idiot in like these 5 different ways. And then like with working with Mindset Rx'd and doing personal training before that, like I've had to evolve in certain ways and come up against these kind of limitations within myself, like constantly. It's like the business only grows, and the number of athletes that we serve only grows in accordance with the amount that I'm able to level myself up. And like, I've come across loads of things like fear of failure, fear of doing a bad job, fear of incompetency, being like outshone or kind of like dismissed by other people. Like, there's been so much along there. Like, how in that first business, like, did you have to evolve?
Well, I mean, initially I had to overcome, I guess, the fear of not imposter syndrome, but I was in an industry which I basically knew nothing about, right? Speaking to people 20 years older than me who did know what they're talking about. So I definitely need to overcome that issue of maybe a lack of confidence straight away, or putting on a facade. So let's say putting on a facade, like being the most confident person in the room when you're the least confident person in the room. And that has stood me in very good stead over the years, because, you know, as you can imagine, with WIT, I've been thrust into situations on a whole different level to that, with different stakeholders and pitching to people and selling the dream and working with some of the world's biggest brands. And most of the time, I'm shitting my pants walking into those rooms, and I think that probably stood me in very, very good stead back there. And then little did I know, my team was much bigger in the cleaning company, because you got 10, 20 people cleaning at site. But little did I know how much that would stand me in stead to lead a team of what we have here now, or what we have done over the years. I think that was definitely a brilliant takeaway.
There must have been so many times where you're like, I could really hide from this this uncomfortable scenario of like pretending to be the most confident person in the room and like having my shit together, and then you chose the option to like go towards the difficult side. What was encouraging you to go down that side?
Well, I think I kind of knew then. I knew I always wanted to be a leader of a team, and I knew that to be a leader of a team, you had to take responsibility all day, every day. There was no hiding place. There is no one to speak to. There is no one who understands the situation you're in. So it was sink or swim, really. And these are all facts now in the WIT business. Now, whilst I pass responsibility on, in inverted commas, to a CEO, like, you know, that's just shared responsibility. But, you know, as a founder and CEO, you know, that is super lonely. So you've got no choice but to take full responsibility for anything that happens.
Yeah, it's like the responsibility of the outputs and I suppose the inputs fall on the CEO, but like your the ownership of the brand is still entirely yours. Like the decisions that are made, and that like the parallels to being the kind of elite athletes, and to actually the parallels to overcoming any kind of challenge in terms of fitness, whether it's like the first day in the gym and kind of thinking about nutrition and getting that together, or like just overcoming the fear of judgment within the gym, or all the way up to like, am I good enough to get to the games? Am I good enough to stand on the podium? Am I good enough to get to semi-finals? Like that is all, I don't know, is terror within that, and it requires that ownership. It requires like no one really knows what that's like. No one really can experience what that's like for you subjectively. So it can be a lonely journey, right?
Definitely, and I think it's just like being an athlete. So, you know, as a runner or any athlete, a CrossFit athlete, you start out, you're pretty good, right? You got some natural talent, you're pretty good. You're winning workouts, and you start to win box throwdowns, and you start to win local throwdowns, and then it gets a bit serious, and then it gets down to real discipline. Like, so for that first bit is easy, and for example at WIT, first 3 years easy. Came up with a good idea, bang,
yeah, and very rewarding. You get like instant success with it.
Yes, everyone's like talking about you, in success, easy, making loads of money, same in the gym, winning all the competitions. Then you have to make marginal gains. You see yourself plateauing, or you make mistakes. So it's a matter of really learning about your weaknesses quickly and having the discipline to better yourself to make those kind of marginal gains, whether that's in business or as an athlete. And that period of time is a long period. It could be over 10 years. Like for me, I'm probably only part of the way through it. And like you said earlier with the gym, you're constantly learning, literally constantly learning. And especially as an athlete, that top level athlete on the top level competition floor, those tiny bits of discipline in all the hours they're putting in is the difference. It is the same with business. Like things become more structured. You have to take more responsibility. There's big decisions that need to make right to move forward. And that's kind of over a longer period of time than those initial easy successes. So I think it's just those constant and consistent marginal gains. I know it's a bit of a stereotypical saying that, but it is.
Yeah, it's difficult to trend upwards, and that's what we're trying to do on a daily basis, and that requires humility and discipline. And there's also like the other side of it of like self-compassion and forgiveness for not being perfect. Like the drive for perfectionism is something that like I've spoken to so far. I've had 7 calls with athletes today, and I would say probably 4 or 5 of them have spoken about perfectionism in some capacity. Like that drive to be perfect, to have really high expectations and hopes. Like there's an interaction with that, which is serving and non-serving. One high standard is obviously fantastic. To aim at excellence, that's what we've got to do. But when that creeps over into perfectionism of like, if there's anything less than 100% success, I deem that as failure, and I kind of hold back. That's a really hard balance to kind of enact. How do you find that balance within your own, well, I suppose business things we're talking about it?
That's super interesting actually. And recently, because I've just watched, well, not just watched, but have you watched Breakpoint on Netflix?
Yeah.
So it's exactly what you just said. So I can't remember the quote in the first episode, but it's the girl, I think Ukrainian girl. She's so obsessed with perfection that she's getting through to so many tour finals, and then on the biggest stage of all, she's falling to bits. Because she like you say, that it's that last little bit where she's reached the top of the game, where she just needs to relax, that she's losing it. It's perfectionism. I think with business, I think what I found is that, and it's a bit, again, you've probably heard this a million times, but I think I'm far more productive, successful when I'm thinking about the day to day and enjoying being at the top of my game and doing and realizing that we're doing good things than I am when I'm thinking about a potential pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Because I'm not going to lie on here, like, as a type, I didn't start WIT to be a multi-millionaire, but you know, when you see the business moving, you think, oh, like, this could be the way to be a multi-millionaire. As soon as you start thinking about that, you start worrying. Everything becomes overly serious, and you know, everything has to be perfect. Oh shit! If this goes wrong, we're not going to get there. Then you bring it back. You take a breath. You try and enjoy the gym in the morning. Enjoy seeing your team. Enjoy getting home, like seeing your family. Suddenly, actually, things start to improve again. So it is that fine balance that you talk about.
Yeah, like it's the process obsession, like the how can I maximize these small details, and the end result takes care of itself. Like, as I find that athletes, but also entrepreneurs as well, and again, anyone who's doing anything difficult, they run into problems when they start thinking about exclusively the what and the when. So what do I want to achieve? So X income, X standard performance, when do I want to achieve it? So essentially SMART goals, very useful, very kind of effective in some ways. But if that's not paired with how do I want to act? So what are my principles and who do I want to be? So my character, those two things never materialize. The what and the when never materialize. But then if we focus almost exclusively, not quite exclusive, but almost exclusively on who do I want to be and how do I want to act, the what and the when take care of itself, because it's a way of living that's meaningful to us, and it's not in some sort of manifestation, the secret way, but in terms of like you're doing what's optimized for you as an individual.
You're so right. It's so important. I have to remind myself of it on a almost weekly basis, I'd say. You know, about what is important, what I enjoy, what we're really doing, where, you know, what the real mission is, and then and when we do that, things for me and work try and kind of take care of themselves.
What are they? I would lead with like an example of like where I go with this, like, because I think it helps set the example of what I'm talking about. What are the ways you get in your own way most frequently in terms of moving forwards? Like mine is always running before I can walk. It's like, okay, one thing goes well for me in terms of like training or in terms of performance or in terms of business or in terms of relationship. It's like, right, I'm going to change that and move on and go to something different. And it's this idea of like, I've got to force things. And that's like one of the things that I get in my own way. How do you get in your own way of success?
This is an easy one because we've had it so many times over the years where it's like losing focus on your initial goals or ideas. Prettier things will always present themselves. With a business like ours that's growing so quickly, new opportunities will always present themselves. If you go after every single one, you're going to go backwards, and we have done in the past. You always have to take a breath, take a step back, speak to the people you trust most in the organizational family, and decide which of those opportunities actually aligns with the actual focus. But we only do that now. So for the first 3 or 4 years, we took every opportunity that came our way. Like for those people who follow WIT, you know, they may know that we had franchise stores in like Hong Kong and Dubai, and this was crazy stuff, like crazy.
What was so exciting to you about those? Because obviously, like you went to them for a reason. Like you went, yes, we're doing that. Like, what made you say yes?
We thought we wanted to grow as aggressively as possible. We thought it was a way of doing it. Yeah. to a degree, wasn't a bad thing, because what we did in the early years was create a lot of hype really quickly, and those things did that, because we were saying our stores in Hong Kong, Dubai, but if anyone went, they weren't stores. They were like little concessions. It wasn't what we do here, but on the website it's like Hong Kong, Dubai. So great hype. Actually, for the business, it distracts from your core focus here. And this was the market: UK customer, UK CrossFit customer. That's the market, not Dubai fitness customer or Hong Kong and Asia fitness customer. So that's a micro example of many things.
How do you identify what is important?
For me, it's I wouldn't say you'd always go back to your original business model focus, but so for example, in a year at WIT or a business, there's likely to be a strategic plan for the 12 months built around 1, 2, or 3 pillars. So 1, 2, or 3, specific strategies. And this is hard because of the opportunities that present themselves. So you'll present that to your leadership team, will come up with it, then you'll present it to the business as a whole. And the danger is, after 6 weeks, everyone forgets it because there are all these other opportunities. These bigger opportunities will come in for the leadership team, but also these distractions will come in for the management team and junior team. It's almost like on a monthly basis, you need to go back to the whiteboard that you all decided on. These are the focus. So all these opportunities have presented themselves. Some of them are good, some of them are not. Which ones align with what we decided a month ago, and which ones don't? And sometimes it's super painful, because someone in the room may think that this store in Japan is the next big thing, so let's go and do it. But then someone in the boring thing may be, oh no, we want to grow online in the UK. And really the boring thing is the thing that makes sense. So you just got to bring everyone back to that.
Yeah, shiny object syndrome is tough to counteract. What I like there is that you had the who are we, like what's our bigger purpose. So the way that relates to an athlete is like, what's my vision of success? Like, what is my health goal? Like, who do I want to be in terms of that? But you've also got the smart goals within that, essentially, of like, okay, 6 weeks from now, 12 weeks from now, whatever, like what explicitly do I want to have happened, and how do I get there, and the steps to, and it's the marrying of those two together, like the more scientific approach and the more kind of well, if you're going to use the opposite, the more religious experience, like who do I want to be, like what type of character do I want to display? That's the meshing of those two together works really nicely.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What did you learn from opening the stores in Dubai and do you say Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, yeah.
Yeah. What did you learn from that?
I mean, Hong Kong was a bit different because it was a friend of mine that I knew from when I was a child, so it was easier to do. We learned that there was a customer there. That was a positive. We learned that it could create hype, but we learned that it was bloody hard to manage. Like trying to, like, to your point, trying to run before you can walk. You soon realise that it's not a good idea. So we just had too many things going on with too small a team, basically. And by the way, they grew the business, they grew the top line revenue, but they didn't grow any profitability, and they didn't really have any tangible value of the tangible addition to the value of the business back here.
Interesting. How do you learn to say no?
It's hard. To this point, it's super hard. Even to this day, me personally, I'm probably guilty of it more than anyone. Where it's hard, it's so hard to say no. There's so many opportunities out there. It's just sometimes you need other people to tell you. Actually, I'd say
who's that person for you?
I'd say I'm lucky enough now to have like a very experienced team, more experienced than me. And most things will funnel through to them anyway. But even in a personal life, it's like sometimes you need someone to help you say no.
Have you got anyone outside the business who you reflect this to?
I mean, I talk to my girlfriend, but it's as a founder, I speak to other founders, I do speak to other founders. In fact, I've had two really cool conversations this week with founders. One's that opened my eyes from a personal perspective, and one really interesting professional conversation. I get like small bits of wisdom from those conversations. Aside from that, really difficult to find anyone, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Again, it's a lonely road. How do you deal with that loneliness? Like, there's, again, no matter what pursuit you're doing, if you're pursuing something difficult, I think it's inherently lonely. No one truly understands what it's like to have your subjective experience. They've got a good idea of it, maybe, but they don't have the full understanding. Like, how do you deal with that?
It's really difficult to deal with the loneliness of being a founder, because I'd say there's almost no businesses out there that are always achieving success. Most of them will have suffered very, very almost treacherous challenges, probably. And you don't sometimes, personally, it's hard to talk to your family because you don't necessarily want to bring that negativity onto them. But then you can't talk to your team because you definitely can't bring the negativity to them. So, the option is coaches, which is a good option, and people who understand, like, other founders, and that's the only way you can deal with it. I think personally, I just managed to plow on. I think I think it's just a mentality. I kind of can get through difficult things fairly comfortably. Where I say comfortably, it will affect me, but I can just get on with it. Whereas I think some people are probably different.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any like nuggets that you've taken from coaching relationships that you think of frequently?
Definitely what we spoke about earlier, the day-to-day thing. So it is super important to have an end goal, or not an end goal, like a progressive goals. But it's more important, without doubt, to enjoy the process. And that process can be anything, whether it's athletic or business or personal life. If you're not enjoying, when I'm enjoying myself, good things happen. I don't want to sound all spiritual, but it's true. And when you're not enjoying yourself, things tend to spiral. So that's always what I think about, and I think it's learning to understand myself and my moods has helped that.
Nice. So the progressional question there is like, what have you done to help understand yourself? Is there any like tools, any methodologies, any conversations? Like, how have you gone about understanding yourself better?
I think I have spoken to more people. So for like 3 or 4 years, I didn't have a coach, didn't speak to any of the founders. You're quite arrogant. When your business is going well, it's your way or the highway, or my way or the highway. Then I opened up to a coach and learned a few nuggets, and I opened up to founders. But I just I think I'd like to think I'm going to do something worthwhile while I'm here on this earth. And at WIT, our mission is to change as many lives as possible through training. And I think sometimes since the process of the business, not just me, but like the wider business, kind of forgotten that, because obviously it's hard to remember that. It's on the wall in the office, but sometimes it's a hollow thing, right? You're chasing revenue targets. I think for me, it's like remembering that, like that is just so important, because I'm passionate about changing people's lives through training. I'm so passionate about it, and I think when we're passionate about it, it'll make a difference to the business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's almost like it's alignment at the end of the day. We have this, maybe it's unspoken initially, the kind of idea of success, a vision of success that we have within ourselves, and we're trying to marry that up to something in the world, kind of like align ourselves with that. And it takes like multiple iterations to get it, but also like once you find it, it's quite easy to let it drift and let it float away from top mind awareness.
You can definitely let it drift. You're right. Time moves so quickly that you can let it drift so easily. and then you'll you'll recalibrate and get it back. But it's maintaining it day to day that's the difficult part, which takes a bit of discipline.
And also it takes so many good decisions to make progress and so few bad decisions to lose everything and to really screw up. And like for example, like a brand that is as like well known as WIT, like it's quite easy to lose your reputation and like to like you've got a lot to lose than that. And it's like, unless you've got that founding principle or that guiding North Star, it's hard to stay on that track, isn't it? Because otherwise you don't know what you're aiming at.
Yeah, I think it's important. Like the challenging thing with anyone like a business like ours is that when you're hiring people and bringing people into the organization, do they buy into the mission? One, two, do they put it into practice themselves? And then three, are they instilling it in their day-to-day process and job? Because I think people will always believe that I'm passionate about it because they see me training, they see me speaking to the community, but will they believe the entity as a whole? To your point, no, maybe not. Challenging as you get bigger.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. When you think of success, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Success. My father's a very successful man, I think. He is. So, he that would be the obvious one. I'm sure it's the same answer a lot, but yeah.
Why is that?
Well, he's just a very successful man that built himself from nothing to being very successful financially and personally, really. So, definitely an inspiration of mine.
Nice. Is the kind of entrepreneurialism that you respect within that, or is there something else? Is there like anything more subtle than would meet the eye initially?
Yeah, he's an entrepreneur through and through. Massive setbacks, personally and professionally. So both the personal and professional setbacks that he's overcome and his ability to be successful as he is as an entrepreneur is kind of inspiring.
Yeah. What's the biggest setback you faced?
Personally or professionally?
Wherever you go with that.
I mean, professionally, honestly, there's probably not one that stands out. I've had some challenging times. We've had some challenging times in that the circumstances that we've all lived in over the last 5 years, 4 years, as you can imagine, for any business out there, any business owner out there, I think 99 out of 100 would say it's the most challenging period they've ever had, whether they're 60 and have had business 40 years or they're like my age and had business 5 to 10 years. I don't think you can rival the roller coaster that people like us have been through on that journey, for sure. But there's so many different like moments in that journey rather than massive big ones.
Yeah. I suppose it's the constant uphill struggle, isn't it? I always liken it to playing a video game, whether this is training or whatever area of your life. You beat a boss, you up level, things get easy for a fraction of a second, and then it's the next most challenging thing.
It's so true. I mean, I suppose the obvious examples for us were a lot of businesses. You got Brexit and COVID within the same 12 months. It's like, you know what? I'm losing my mind now. I can't remember which was first. I think COVID was first, wasn't it?
I can't remember. I honestly can't remember.
Brexit was a year into COVID, yeah. So you've had COVID, you've had COVID, or the first part of COVID. So for us, you've got bricks and mortar in the most expensive real estate in the world, closed. And you've also got the online business, which has flown initially, but then supply starts to tie up. And then COVID finishes, you have an amazing Christmas. And then your European business has been going like that for 3 years. And then the next day, nothing, gone. European business gone, basically. And I guess that's an example of what you just said. It's like good. And then it's like bad, and it's good, and then it's bad again. So it's like the roller coaster.
Yeah. How did you keep your shit together at that point?
COVID was the hardest thing ever at the beginning. is because it turned out better than it could have been for business like us. But I remember that feeling of like, this is it, it's gone. Everything we've built, and I remember the one standout for me there is that the one time I've got emotional in front of people at work is for all their sins, the Conservative Party, when Rishi Sunak, I think there was a day he announced the furlough scheme, rate support, rent, security, and TV was on the office, big screen, and we were still there. I think it was like a few days before we were let go, and I just had to go into my office like in tears because you think you've gone from going under to being saved overnight. It's definitely the toughest moment, but I mean, there's been so many off the back of that.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can really imagine. What do you do on a regular basis for your own mindset and mental health?
I train. I know it sounds like obviously I'm going to say that, but honestly, I train. I'm obsessed with training. For those who know me, like too much. I'm not one of those guys that it does overtrain. But I'm sensible with it as well now because I'm old enough to know what I should do, what I shouldn't, and what parts of my body are hurting and what aren't. So I spend a lot of time training, a lot of time reading. As long as I can get those two things in, should stay even.
Perfect. What books have you gifted most to other people?
So you know what? With regards to books, I used to again during COVID I did this a lot. I used to send out books to the team, like Atomic Habits would be one. Shoe Dog, obviously, I've sent that to everyone that's
perfect book for you. Yeah,
perfect book. That's my absolute favorite book of all time, obviously. But so I've gifted a load of business and self-help books to people, and I used to for 2-3 years through COVID. That's all I read, but I haven't read one for 18 months. So I just read fiction now. Nice. Because I got too caught in the weeds, and I started to. Whilst it helped with mindset in the business, I was like questioning myself. Like I'd read so many books. It's like should I follow? I think it's called What Matters Most, the book about OKRs, and we instilled that at work, and it was great. And then I'd read another book, and they say, "Oh, it's great, but you can adapt it this way." So then I'd get the team in again 3 months later and say, "Oh, let's adapt it." And so I think we went on holiday a couple of years ago, and I started to read some fiction, which I never did. And now I find that reading fiction for an hour in the morning chills me. So why not do that? Like it's a balance. So I think it's what's better for the mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be making you a more intelligent, cultured person every day.
Yeah, and also your job isn't purely analytical, it's creative. It's half analytical, half creative, and you've got to fire that and train that somehow. What books have been I don't know, what books stand out in a fiction point of view?
At the moment I'm reading the James Swallow books.
Which one's those?
About Mark Dane, undercover MI6 agent. I'm really into spy and criminal series because this is really random, but I did international politics at uni, so I actually applied for MI6 back then. I was properly into it. I did my dissertation on African politics, like international intervention in West African countries in like 80s and 90s. I was properly into all that, so I applied for MI6. So since I've started fiction again, it's all spy thrillers. I think it's Greg. Can't remember his second name, and James Swallow. I've read like all 6 or 7 of their books.
Nice. You've just developed a very convincing cover story with WIT. Then like, just so deep into cover.
It's amazing. So yeah.
Perfect, man. Cool. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate this. It's an awesome conversation and good to get to know you at a deep level.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
Where can people find out a little bit more about you, follow you, that kind of thing?
So follow me on LinkedIn. If they look for me on LinkedIn, Daniel Williams, WIT Fitness will pop up. That's my probably suitable for my age as well. That's my social media platform of choice. So, but I do try and give an opinion on there as much as I can. So yeah, if people are interested in hearing it or connecting with me, that's probably the place to go.
Perfect. Ideal. Thank you very much, man. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Limitless Athlete podcast. I'm Tom Foxley, and you can find me on Instagram by searching for @TomFoxley. That's TomFoxley. And I'll be back soon with another episode of the Limitless Athlete podcast.